Good evening. Today is Tuesday, February 21st, 2017. This is the regular meeting of the Rhinebeck Central School District Board of Education. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 7th, 2017 regular meeting?
So moved. Second.
Any changes or discussion on the minutes? Okay, all those in favor? All except Javert? And one abstention? Okay. We have no public present at the moment, so we will move on to reports and discussion. We have the 2017-18 budget development update.
Okay, so as those of you who have been through this process before, from now until mid-April when the board has to adopt a budget to go to the voters for their consideration, we put 2017-18 budget development update on our agenda. You'll notice there's no asterisk there, and there were no documents. We're still working through a process. Tom met with our building principals this past week when I was not around, and we're looking at options for closing as much of the gap between where we're at now and the tax levy cap number. I will just share that we don't have a series of proposals to share with you for your consideration tonight, although we're working towards that. But the takeaway from our last meeting when we discussed this idea was that, and again, my takeaway was not an accurate takeaway. Please disabuse me of my opinion, but my takeaway was that it was the board's preference that we look at potential budget reductions that would not impact programs and services for kids, and that would, as much as we were able to, maintain full-time positions, not result in a series of .8 positions, for example. I will tell you that it's going to be a challenging task. We've gone through quite a few rounds of discussions with our administrators, and there are no easy solutions out there. It might also be worth giving some thought. Should we either not be able to bring the board acceptable options within those parameters that would get us down to that number, which is what? We're about
605.
605. To be thinking in advance, if the board were to decide to go to the voters with a budget that would drive a tax levy that would exceed the tax levy cap, and we talked about that last year, we talked about it a bit earlier this year. What would be an acceptable percentage above the tax levy cap? I think if we just stayed right where we were now, we'd be where percentage-wise?
Yeah, add about another a little over 3% to it, so it'd be a little over 5 right now.
Right,
about
right.
5 1/4.
Right.
As it currently stands, the budget.
Just as an academic exercise right now, is a 5.5% tax levy increase untenable? Is a 1% tax levy increase beyond the 2.14 or 1.8 acceptable? I mean, those are kind of like the worst case scenario and the best case scenario of exceeding the tax levy cap. So, when this all comes out in the wash, my inclination is that some of the things we'll bring you may not be acceptable to the board. and/or the community, that we may not be able to get down to that magic number. You know, there are, again, just as a reminder, not that we're terribly optimistic about it, but, you know, there are some other things still in play. You know, we still don't have a final budget, even though our state aid increase at this point from the governor is dismal. I heard something earlier today that at a meeting that I was at with somebody from the state education department, that there's a push on to lobby for the implementation of foundation aid, which the governor has arbitrarily taken off the table at this point, to look at push for a 3-year phase-in of foundation aid. Now, exactly how much that would drive to us, especially in the first year, I assume that even happens, but that's a possibility. You know, hope springs eternal. And the other thing we don't have at this point, although we're even less optimistic about it, is we don't have a firm number in terms of health insurance. We should have that by the first week in March. So I expect by the next time we meet, we'll have more information that's pretty firm information to bring to you for your consideration and discussion. Meeting with our building principals again tomorrow to take a more granular look at some of the things that they submitted to us as their ideas, and some ideas that Tom and I have discussed that were not on their list. So there's still some discussion that has to be done before we feel comfortable coming to you with some firm numbers of potential budget reductions, and within those parameters that I just mentioned to you. That's kind of our goal right now. I don't know that we're going to be successful in being able to do that. So that's where we're at, yes.
So I have a question to follow up on something that I asked about last week, or last meeting, sorry. I had asked if you could put together something showing the increases that we've seen in state aid over the course of the last, 3 to 5 years. Maybe 5 is a good benchmark, so that we can get a better sense of where we're likely to end up. I mean, it's not foolproof, but at least it'll help us, I think, conceptualize where we're going. And that, 1 to 5% range that you just gave us might actually turn into something that's a little more likely to be closer to what we'd be.
If I can refine your request
Certainly.
a bit, and I assume that Tom can do this, but I haven't asked him yet. There, as most of you know, there are two components of state aid, generally speaking. One is expense-driven aid. You buy more services at BOCES, you get more BOCES aid. You decide to spend less on BOCES services, you get less BOCES aid. I mean, it's driven by what you buy.
Right.
Okay. The other piece of state aid is what we're talking about now as foundation aid. Money that the state gives you for the general support of your schools, regardless of how much or how little you spend for various services that drive aid. Transportation aid is another expense-driven aid that we get.
Yeah.
So, it would probably be a good idea if Tom could show us both of those pieces of the aid picture for the last, say, 5 years.
Sure.
I think probably the more salient piece of that, though, is going to be the non-expense driven aids, the amount of money that, based on our combined wealth ratio, you'll remember that from the meeting with Senator Serino, that deck is kind of stacked against us, but I think that'll give us a better idea of what we might stand to get if things ran according to the formula. Of course, this year, our governor's decided, well, we're not gonna run the
Right.
foundation aid formula, and as a result, we wound up getting $18,000.
Right. But we all know that there's a fairly substantial amount of gamesmanship that goes on.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it wasn't last year, I think it was the year before, when we didn't even get state aid runs until after the legislature and the governor had made their budget deal. So I don't know that we necessarily have to give much more, even any more credence to what the announcement was than we did 2 years ago or last year or any other year.
I agree. I mean, gamesmanship is the name of the way this game is played and has been for a long, long time, so.
More's a pity.
No reason to think this year will be is going to be any different.
But I mean, I don't think this is an empty exercise. I do think that this.
No, I don't
No,
think it is.
not at all.
I don't think
Not at
it is either. And you also, recall that the foundation aid formula came out of a lawsuit based in New York City that required the state to support its public schools. So, I forget what the terminology was. You might remember this.
Right, the campaign for fiscal equity.
Yeah, right, that was the
Yeah.
lawsuit, and then the judge used a definition of, like, the type of public education that he had judged that the state has a requirement to fund.
Sound
Free.
basic.
Sound
Around
basic
sound
education,
basic, right.
thank you. And again, this year, our governor has decided rather arbitrarily, well, you know what, forget that court case.
Right.
We're just not going to do
Doesn't count.
foundation aid. So
Right.
stay tuned. So that's kind of where we're at. I hope we're scheduled to meet with the Finance Committee later this week, and we hope to have maybe some ideas that we can share with you, again, depending on how tomorrow's meeting goes, but I'm in the process of doing damage control to my schedule for this week, so I'll let you know.
Do either one of you remember when our next meeting with the with our representatives is?
Yeah, the 9th and the 10th of March.
Okay.
I think the 9th is with Assemblyman
Cahill.
Barrett,
No,
and I think
Barrett.
Cahill's on.
Cahill's on the Friday.
Oh, okay, okay.
So we've got a couple of weeks running up to that.
Barrett's at
After the next
2:30 on Thursday, and then the following morning at 10 o'clock. I just went over it with my daughter, because I gotta go pick her up afterwards.
Okay. Well, somebody will send around a reminder or email, I expect.
Can I ask a question? So, so Tom, when do you expect the health insurance numbers? Do you have a date?
Well, the actual meeting is the third Wednesday in March
Oh, okay.
is when it is, but sometimes we get the knowledge ahead of time. That's when the DHIC board will act on it, but
Okay.
usually ahead of time. But I don't expect it to move too far from 15%. I would not expect it to go down.
Really?
Yeah, really. Yeah.
I thought we were talking 10 to 12.
15. I got 15 budgeted, and I think that's what it's gonna come in at, 15.
Some districts in our region
Across the river, it's 25.
Ooh.
budgeted 10 or 12, and they're looking at having to increase their expenditure.
No, I know you budgeted 15, but I thought you thought the number may come down a little.
We did, but we hit with another bad month. 2 bad months really in a row. Worst and then the second worst. It's didn't go good the past couple months. And in Finance Committee, I can talk a lot more about it. We got some good reports showing us why it's happening.
Any other questions or discussion on the budget? So we'll move on to the nominations and elections for the Duchess BOCES board.
Yes, this is just I think a final reminder on that. I brought it up at our last meeting. Not sure if there's any interest, but that boards that can nominate, and ours is one of them, because we don't have anybody on the BOCES board currently, must be received on or before March 9th. So we do have one more opportunity if somebody comes out of the woodwork and is agreeable to so serve. So I just wanted to keep it on your radar, that's all. I don't have anybody in mind, but I'll leave it on there again for our meeting on the 7th, and that would be our last shot at that.
But you don't have to be a board member to actually
I don't think
run.
you're allowed to be a board member, actually. I was reading this correctly, I could be wrong.
Just commute.
No, because Art Pritchard was
Yeah,
a board member.
Right. And run route.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can't be an employee of the district,
Okay.
thank you, Mark.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, so I'm sorry, I didn't understand. There may be community members who may be interested in serving
Correct,
that we
yes.
should speak with and forward them.
That's what I want to say. You don't have to be a board member to be on their board.
Thank you, okay, great.
That's what I was trying to say.
Thank you.
That's correct.
Okay.
So weren't you thinking of maybe trying to communicate to parents through the high school newsletter or through a?
Yeah, I was thinking more, just in terms of the timing of those things that don't come out with that much frequency, that we put something on our website and we could easily send out an email blast. I think we had mentioned last time to maybe parents of high school
Yeah.
kids who
Right,
might
yeah.
be in BOCES or headed to BOCES.
Right.
Right.
Might be a potential way to tap
That's smart.
someone's interest, so we will do that.
Okay, great.
Sure. Okay, that's all I have on that.
All right, so we'll move on to good news. Anyone good news to report?
Please.
I know, it's been rather gloomy, haven't we?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Go ahead.
I think it's good news that our superintendent returned to us safely after his voyaging.
Yes.
And what a great group you were
Yes,
voyaging
It
with.
was a
Yes.
good group and a good trip, and that was thoroughly enjoyable activity for me. Part of it being working side by side with 13 of our students, and part of it being working to help a school and students in another country. Was another great experience. So thank you for mentioning that.
All right, good news. All right, we'll move on to old business. Any old business?
I don't have.
All right, public comment. Does anyone in the public wish to make a comment at this time? Okay, so now we'll move on to other. All right, so in that case, we'll move on to action items. Is there anyone who would like to remove anything from the consent agenda? All right, so may I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve additional spring coaches for the 2016-17 school year? Varsity track, throwing and pole vault, Ryan Cimarelli, $4,032. Modified softball, Henry Frischknecht, $2,365.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. And motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the list of additional emergency conditional substitute non-instructional staff for the 2016-17 school year.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. And a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve an additional extension of a leave request from Kylie Danaman, having commenced on September 1st, 2016, with such leave to be taken as unpaid maternity leave through August 31st, 2018.
So moved. Second.
Discussion.
Yes.
Lisa?
I move to table this motion pending discussion in executive session.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor of tabling? Okay, that's unanimous. That motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the following permanent civil service appointments: John Bamstrom, food service helper, and Susan Fitzgerald, food service helper effective March 7th, 2017.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. And a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the following donations in support of Melanie Yates after-school enrichment program, Eco Warriors, as follows. Tom's, $25 gift card. Williams Lumber, $10 gift card. Countryside Animal Hospital, catheter and syringe, approximately $10 value. Phantom Gardener, gravel, ferns, and soil, $68.02.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Of course, we'd like to thank those donors for their contributions. All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. Okay, a motion upon the recommendation of superintendent of schools to accept the following donation. Support our athletes Rhinebeck, SOAR, in the amount of $1,890.91 to help offset the cost of the WeatherBug weather station at the Rhinebeck High School.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? And again, thank you to SOAR for their contribution to the weather station. All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the increase in work hours for Rosita Castellanos, food service helper, from 4 hours to 5.75 hours due to the vacancy created by the resignation of Gail Hamilton, effective February 22nd, 2017.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the resignation of Andrew Hettinger, junior varsity lacrosse coach.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the additional spring coaches for the 2016-17 school year. Junior varsity lacrosse, Sean Gilbane, $2,837.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. And we have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to award the topography and boundary surveying and mapping RFP to Thu Surveying in the amount of $22,000.
So moved. Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out to the board that this is a very late breaking action item, and the facilities committee met with our architects and our construction manager just this afternoon. Their process for the capital project required them to put out 4 RFPs to various firms in 4 different areas, one being surveying, another being geotech, was it?
Yeah, geotech. Roof scan,
Roof scanning and what was it?
asbestos, and that type of stuff.
Right. And the first RFP, which is for topography and boundary surveying and mapping, came in. Tom and our design and construction professionals reviewed the RFPs and are recommending to me and I to you that we accept the low cost submitted by Thu Surveying. And the reason it's on your agenda tonight is because if the board sees its way to approving that tonight, we get a 2-week jump on the process. And at this point, where we're trying to get everything into SED as quickly as possible to get approval and then go through the process, even buying us 2 weeks is a positive thing. Should you wish more time to review this or ponder it, it's certainly, it's not like a non-starter, but board members at the meeting felt like it would be worth bringing to your attention tonight.
And I just want to add, having been at the meeting today, that our architects have worked with this firm, and they've had nothing but positive things to say about them. So there's no reason that was identified at our meeting for there to be any concern about this firm or this recommendation.
All right, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. We have a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of discussion of the employment history of the people?
So moved.
Second.